Thanks for joining us here at noon. I'm Tatum Miller. A hearing that could define the remaining days of the Minnesota legislative session takes place in St. Paul today. The Senate Ethics Subcommittee will convene later today to discuss a complaint against Senator Nicole Mitchell. The DFL senator from Woodbury was arrested and charged with first-degree felony burglary after allegedly breaking into her stepmother's Detroit Lakes home several weeks ago. Since then, Republicans in the Senate have been trying to block her from voting on the floor. But the DFL's one-vote majority in the state Senate would turn into a tie if Mitchell were removed from the body. We'll have more on the results of the Ethics Committee review later tonight.